Hello and welcome to this tutorial for Unfiltered Audio's Byome. My name is Nate Raubenheimer of Protoculture, and I'm going to be running through this plugin with you over the next couple of videos, covering the overview and how it works, all the separate effects modules and modulation. Unfiltered Audio is one of my favorite plugin developers at the moment. They make incredibly creative effects, and this one is no exception. It's the latest addition to the Unfiltered Audio plugin range. And it is essentially a multi-effects unit with 36 spectral effects and 40 effects in total, 40 effects modules. It operates very similar to a Eurorack modular would, but obviously just for effects. And it is incredibly deep, the amount of modulation options you have. So we're going to dive into that right now, first looking at the overview of the plugin and the basic operation of how everything works. We'll start from the top and just work our way through the entire GUI, covering what all the little bits and bobs are, and a couple of things you should know on how they work. We'll start at the top. We've got the display settings. Up at the top here, you have options to change skins, enable tooltips, use OpenGL, and enable display just for specific patches. That is not that important, but it's there. This is the Save Preset button. This is the Open Preset button. This is for opening presets outside of the traditional user preset area and presets that are included with the plugin. Clicking on this preset name here, or this bar at the top, will give you the options to save presets, load presets, delete presets, reset the defaults, and access to all your presets there as well. So, moving on, we can skip through presets like this. And then we have this little gem of a button over here. This is the randomize all button. This will randomize the settings for the entire plugin, and you can have a ton of fun with this, especially with quite complex setups. What this does, this will randomize the settings that you see here. It will not, however, randomize the routing for the cabling. It will also randomize the amount of modulation you get, but not changing these plugin points. So you do need to set up a basic patch. The randomization also won't add modules. So you do need to add them yourself and then link them up and then hit randomize, and you can have a lot of fun with that. Let's move down to the next level. We have our master section here, which is the input gain. That's very self-explanatory. A sample rate dial. Now, this sample rate is not the typical bit crusher effect that you would usually expect. You have a option to add bit crusher. As you can see, there's a bit crusher in here. That will be the more traditional effect that you're used to. What this does is it affects the sample rate for the entire signal flow of the plugin and every module in the plugin as well, aside from the modulation data. The modulation data is not affected by the sample rate at all, but this would have an effect on the, let's say, the delay times. It would have effects on the maximum frequencies that filters can sweep through. Every single part of the signal flow is affected by the sample rate, so it can have quite radical effects on the audio passing through the chain that you have here. And we'll check that out later as well. And this is AGC, this is automatic gain compensation. This does what it says it's supposed to do. It basically just tries to get the input gain to sound the same as the output gain once all the effects have been applied. It does employ some pretty extreme compression and expansion. So pushing it to 100%, you can sometimes, depending on how much difference there is between your input and output gain, you can get some quite extreme compression happening with this. Moving on, the mix dial. This is pretty self-explanatory. This is just a dry-wet mix for a global dry-wet mix, I must add, just for the entire plugin. And the output gain, again, fairly self-explanatory. You'll notice here as well, these are input points for the modulation matrix. You can send outputs to pretty much anything in this plugin. And yeah, so wherever you see a little plug point like that, not these ones in the middle, that's just a graphical thing for the buttons, for the actual knobs. But these ones down at the bottom, these highlighted ones, you can add control points to. We'll cover that in just a sec as well. Moving on, your display options, you have 3 options. It's fairly cosmetic, this, but you can switch between a sort of spectral mode, a more traditional waveform, and this pretty cool bar wave display. There we go. That's pretty simple. We'll move down to the next layer now, which is where the fun starts to happen. This is our module rack, or the effects module rack. And starting on the left here, we've got a few controls. This is obviously just tells us the effects rack. We have a global bypass over here, which will turn all of them off. This one will minimize all the modules. If we click this, you'll see you'll have, this is what they're supposed to look like normally when you add them, with all the controls and options available. You have minimal mode, which is just sort of little sliders instead. This just helps you when you are working on bigger, more complex patches. You can just quickly squash all of them down. Additionally, what you can do as well is you can double click on the module name. That'll expand to the bigger one, but just specifically for one module instead. And once you've got those open, you'll see you have a slider down here that you can move through your rack. So these do pretty much daisy chain. You can move them around, change the order of effects just by sliding them around like this. And the signal flow is basically from start to end. Every single module will have a mix dial as well, so you can dial in multiple effects, mix in smaller amounts of each effect in the chain, and then you have the global mix as well. Now this plus button on the end will add a new module. And then the basic functionality of the modules as well, which we'll cover in more detail once we actually get into the taking a look at each specific module itself. If you click on this little bar on the side here, you have your save presets. Now these presets, just note that these are not the same as the presets up here. These are global presets. These ones, clicking on these little bar graphs here, these are presets for the specific module itself. So you can have quick access to settings for specific modules when you're building up a global preset for the entire plugin. Same story, load preset, delete preset, reset the defaults, and you can also randomize the preset. And this is a more focused version of the randomization, not the global random that you have at the top. You can actually randomize the settings just for one specific module by doing that. You can also select from the menu all the different modules that are available to you and flick through the modules just by clicking on these little arrows. You notice as well they're all color coded differently according to what genre module they're in. Now if we move down to the bottom, a lot of the functionality is the same, except this is all modulation sources. So this is our modulation rack. The functionality is pretty much the same. You have a global bypass once again. This is a little bit different. This basically enables and disables the display for the cabling. So if things are getting a little bit like a bird nest and you need to see what's going on, you can just get rid of those. Again, double clicking will expand your modules. Same goes for the macro setup. You have 8 macros, which we're going to cover in more detail, but double clicking that will open those up for you. And lastly, let's just take, you have the similar setup over here, except with the addition of duplicate remove modulators as well. You can select all your different modulators here in these menus, or flick through them again and obviously disable them there. lastly, the thing I just wanted to cover was the method in which you connect modulators to inputs. It's pretty straightforward. You just click a output and drag it to an input. If you want to delete, though, it's a little bit less straightforward. When you click on that one, you'll see it actually highlights the circle and just creates another connection. You don't necessarily want to do that. What you want to look for if you want to delete a connection or move a connection is these slightly brighter points on the cable. You'll see on the ends, little cable ends where it's highlighted, it's slightly thicker. You just click on that. It'll allow you to actually drag it off and drag it anywhere where there isn't an input, and it'll delete it. Or you can move it as well to any other input if you want. Lastly, the bottom row, plugin aligns. All their plugins look the same. You can resize down at the bottom there. You can freely resize the plugin if you want. This will take you Plugin Alliance website, your activation settings, and your manual is available from that question mark. So that pretty much covers the general overview of the plugin. We're going to dive into the incredibly complex modulation rack in the next video. This is also available in all of Unfiltered Audio's plugins. This is the latest sort of iteration of the modulation rack, but you'll feel right at home with the other plugins. Hopefully we'll do some follow-up videos with the other plugins at some stage as well, and you'll see that a lot of this will pertain to those. So we'll cover that in the next video and then jump into the modules by category in separate videos after that. So I will catch you in the next video. Enjoy. Cheers.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting, and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content. And if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.